In this video, I wanted to do a short and sharp focus on all of the gun plays in each of the positions for NRL Fantasy. We're going to kick it off with our hooking position. What we're looking for, guys, is their points. Like, are they going to be one of the best scorers in their position? We're going to look at their potential value, their chances of making money, and then the third one being their risk level. I'm going to kick it off with Harry Grant. So he's our clear top of the points guy. I don't see anyone else getting too close to him, maybe within a few points across the entire season. But Harry Grant, one of those best options up front. Value-wise, I'd see potentially a little bit of value on him if he can bounce back a little bit. And this entire hooker field is a little bit down on last year. So that all of them basically have a chance to go back up to the levels that they've shown in either 2021 or 2022. And Harry Grant's one of those guys. And I see him as a very low-risk play. The only reason why you would push against Harry is if you wanted to go for a cheaper option to spend money elsewhere. And number two guys on the list there is Damien Cook. And for him, points are right up there as well. I have him at number 2 in that scenario there. And I don't have too much value on Damien. There's a chance that both of these guys potentially lose a few minutes there. And then as a risk play, I see him as a fairly low-risk play. Obviously, just the money that you're spending on him. Reece Robson, I see him as probably the third guy based on points, but value has the highest of these three here. So you can spend a little bit less money on him, about 100K at that, over Harry Grant, and you should be able to see some value on there. He really dropped off in that mid to that late part of the season. So have a good look at getting Reece Robson in your side. And as a risk standpoint, I see him as a little bit of a higher risk than the two guys above, but I think he has the highest upside of those couple of guys based on that value. Jerry Marshall-King, the big thing from him is the buy in round 3. Harry Grant has the buy in round 4. So both those guys have that in the first few weeks. So you would likely either have to pair them with another hooker, or you will have to either be ready to trade someone in or trade them out in the week that they have that buy. So keep that in mind with those guys. But he has potentially a bit of value given he had a shoulder issue for the sort of second part of his season. And that is, so he definitely has a little bit upside on that. Points-wise, I have him as 4th. And value-wise is a little bit there. Risk-wise, I think he's about a medium risk type of play. Hopefully that shoulder is good for him and potentially lose a few minutes as well. So there's a couple of things there. We have Jaden Brayley as our next guy on that list there. For him, potentially some value on that if he happens to play anywhere close to that sort of 70 minutes. Then he could be a guy that has 5 to 10 points of value based on the amount of tackles that he can make. If Crossan plays a little bit more through the 13 role and only 10 to 15 minutes for Brayley covering at hooker, then Brayley could be one of those guys that does really well. I have him as a medium to high risk play, just at his price there, being priced just over 40 there. I find that a little bit difficult to slot him into your side. And then Reed Marnie, risk for him is about that medium as well. He has started well last year especially, and he could definitely do that again. So he has that boom potential, but the amount of missed tackles that he has, potential for him to lose some minutes to Kurt Mann, I see him as a fairly risky play and 6th on the list in terms of points and potential value in that one. Let's move to the mids there. And Payne Haas is our clear top points getter. There's a chance that he goes over that. I think he's extremely low risk. There's a very high likelihood that he is very highly owned coming into round 1 here of 2024. Isaiah Yeo, very, very similar to that of Haas there, except for the fact that he does have that buy again, which turns out didn't even cause any issues for him last year. You just used him as a loop that week and obviously didn't get those points, but he was someone you didn't have to trade out for the entirety of the year. So a super low risk play, super high on the points. You then go to Jack DeBellin, who I find is a very, very interesting prospect. I have him as 3rd in points, at just under these guys at slightly over 60 points a game. That gives him about 4 to 5 points of value if he can get those massive minutes, somewhere around that 70 minutes with games of 80 minutes. The risk there is probably about a medium, just for the fact that he's got a new coach and we're not sure how that's going to play out. Cam Murray, next on the list, he has a really good points per game kind of value here, I think. At 4th, I've got him in there. The value there is for him to get back to 2022 levels, where he was a 63-point guy. So that's 6 points potentially undervalued if he can get back to that. It was just his attacking stats that really faltered. So if the Bunnies can come back, I think he's going to be a really good option there. And I have him as a fairly low-risk guy of going under that 57 that he's at currently. Cam McInnes, the risk for him, very, very high, because if Dale Finucane's in that 13 role, he doesn't get those big minutes that we need from him. And even if he does start at lock, does he play 50 minutes? Does he play 60? Does he play 65? But we know what he can do when he does get those massive minutes in that 13 role. You move to someone like Scott Sorensen. I do see a decent amount of value in him. He had that almost the full year there on the edge, and people thought he was a stopgap, and he ended up being their guy. Now that they've had a few guys move on, it's clearly his spot now, and Hosking's likely to be moved on as well. He has about 5 points of value if he scores exactly like he did last year, and obviously there's potential for an increase in that as well. So I have him as a fairly low risk play, just more of a factor if he has that value on hand or not. And then Hopgood, he's going to be in the edge and the mid dual as well. So with him there, the points are really, really high at over 60. He has that dual position, which is great. And they have a really nice run throughout the season there for especially the early play with Hopgood. And then potentially if he doesn't make Origin, could be really good playing round 13 as well. So Hopgood, I have him at 7 there. I just think there's a potential for him to drop down a little bit. So starting with him, probably not the best play in that one there. We go to the edge, and for Feeder, clearly the best option for points. The main issue for him is that they have an early buy in round 2, and he's also got off-season surgery and is touch and go from round 1, but wouldn't be completely fit, I don't think either. We spoke about Hopgood as well there in that one in both, so he's second for the edges, which is cool. Isaiah Papali'i, he can definitely push back in towards his 2021 and 2022 levels. I think if he moves to the right, that's where the value is. And if he is, I think there'll be a few people to go for him. And obviously points as well could push up near that 60 mark, which he's done in those 2 years that I spoke about. John Bateman as well. The main issue with those two guys and their risk level's fairly low, but they have a buy in round 1. So it's unlikely you start with them, but there could be a guy to trade in fairly quickly there if that's how they line up. So Bateman, again, very much in base stats was a lot of his points this year, similar to that of Papali'i. So if Tigers can go better, both these guys could do really well. So I have them as decent options at 3 and 4. Eli Katoa, I see him having potential value there. He didn't score too many tries at the beginning of the year. He got a few line breaks, but I think if the Storm can play really well, second year for him in that edge position, I think he can step up, and he probably has around 5 points of value and some decent points at that. You go to Tyson Frizzell and Jacob Preston. I have both of those guys are 6 and 7, very, very similar players at the moment, just in terms of their fantasy scoring. I think that they could be around that 52 to 56 type of range for those two guys. And if they were able to be there, then you do see a little bit of value on both of them. Preston's second year in this team now, potentially getting better, the Bulldogs. So yes, people get a good look at him, but I also think he has a little bit more room to grow in terms of his work ethic and his tackling. And obviously his fitness is going to be a part of that as well. And Frizzell, just more the tried and true guy that's going to have has a pretty good Origin schedule as well, bye schedule at that. Move to the halves now, the last 3 positions, guys. Cleary and Hines, both clearly up top with their points. That's very clear, top 2 best, and you want to get them in as soon as possible, whether you just start with 1 or get 2. I think either way you're going to be good with those 2, not much more to say. Fogarty's number 3 in terms of the best choices, I think, potentially 8 to sort of 10 points of value. If he can do well in a fairly poor Raiders team, that's probably the main risk with him. And he started really slowly last year. So there are a couple of the risks. So you have him about a medium level. Cleary and Hines are very low risk at that. So with Fogs there, potential for keeper status and also making some cash there. Mitch Moses, I have him as a fairly low risk play. Potentially 5 points of value. I think that he can be a low 60s guy after he's a 57 man last year. So very clearly probably the 3rd best scorer that has a potential little bit of value there. Burton and Sammy Walker I have at 5 and 6, and they are very clearly the boom or bust type of guys, and they could very clearly be a wasted pick. So I have them as fairly high risk to start with, just because they could score you about a 40-45 or about right on what you're paying for them, and it seems a bit of a waste where you could spend that money elsewhere there. So yeah, if you're interested in the boom picks, and they're the 2 guys. Speaking of boom or bust picks, it's the centers and the wing fullback guns that are very clearly in that category. For the centers, Dan Gagai, best scores of his career there at a 54 average. So if you're picking him at the beginning, you're really, really hoping that he goes like 60 plus at the start. Otherwise, it could be a little bit of trouble for you in your selection there. And I would suggest going for the wing fullbacks as your potential boom or bust guys, rather than going for those centers there, in my opinion. Gags there with that one. I expect him to hit about that 50 average. Isaac Tonga, with him, you're looking at a guy that's going to be very close to that 50 average in the mid to high 40s there in a really good team. A lot of people are worried about him not using modern medicine, and that's completely fair. I can be completely with you on that one. We've got Val Holmes next, and he's a very consistent player. If the Cowboys play well, he could have that boom. So up to you if you want to grab Val Holmes or not. Joey Manu's next one on the list, the dual position man at center. I don't want to touch him, but we know at some point of the season we want to look at Joey. Very similar to that of Garrick. I wouldn't start with him personally, but there will be opportunities at some point with his dual position to slot him in there as a non-origin guy. Same to that with Manu. Very different to that with Val Holmes. So all of these guys are in that medium to high risk play, just to start with, because not many of them have that clear bit of value at the moment, but they could at some point. And then Campbell Graham is that last one listed, number 6. I just have him as a potential starter, get some good points on the board play with the Bunnies like he did last year. So he started really well before he got injured. So some lower games in there due to the injury. And then to finish things off with the wing fullbacks, the guy that I think should be on a lot of people's list if you are going to spend up in one of those boom or bust kind of potential areas, and that's Kalen Ponga. Have him at medium risk just because he was very, very consistent. He's in a team now that's very, very good as well in the Knights. They have a lot of great attack, and so potential some value on him given he was able to average in the low 60s at 62, priced at 55 there at when he's played at fullback. So potential for value and the best point scorer in that position. Why not? I suppose that you've got him there. If you either go, I think you either go for Ponga or you either go for Payne Haas in that one. Number 2, Latrell Mitchell there. Again, for points, I think he's going to be the second best guy. Has stretches where he can get 60 plus very comfortably. Fairly low to medium risk type of play there. Reece Walsh could have the upside if he takes that next leap this year. Does he actually do that? That's the question. I think at worst, you're going to get exactly where he's priced at, but potential for going bigger and better than that. So fairly low risk to kick things off there with Walshy. Drinkwater, I think, is a medium risk type of guy. He has the upside. He had that stretch of games where he absolutely brained it last year. So it could be another guy to look at as a potential, probably not to start with, but again through round 4, 5, 6 onwards kind of thing as a look in there, who won't be in the Origin setup likely. And then Tedesco at number 5. I have him as a potential bounce back player. He has lots of mid 50s to 60 type of averages, and he's down under 50 in this season that's just gone. Do the Roosters start better? They have a pretty tough draw to kick things off. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work personally, but Teddy there is a potential bounce back. Rounds out this wing fullback guns slot there, and as my potential buyers coming into that, and guys that you could look at as well as potential pod plays, and guys to round out your amazing 17/21 there. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this type of video. This was a trial. I will be doing this type of video for a buy, hold, and sell during each and every round, which is going to be cool. And I'll do this after the mid-range videos as well, and I'll do this after the cash cows video as well, and we'll do some updates along the way. But thanks for being in here for this one. I hope it was really helpful, and we'll catch you in the next one.